The Kenyan sun, a relentless golden orb, beat down on the sprawling marble terrace of Lilian's private villa in Muthaiga. From this vantage point, nestled amidst jacaranda trees and manicured lawns, the Nairobi skyline shimmered in the distance, a city she believed was hers for the taking. At 28, Lilian wasn't just wealthy. She was Lilian, a name whispered in awe, envy, and sometimes a little disdain across the continent. Her beauty was undeniable, a canvas of rich, dark skin, high cheekbones, and eyes that held a defiant sparkle. Her arrogance, however, was legendary, a shimmering cloak woven from a multi-billion-dollar inheritance and an insatiable appetite for the extravagant. Lilian's day began not with a gentle alarm, but with the soft hum of her personal chef preparing a bespoke breakfast of avocado toast with truffle oil, organic Kenyan coffee from the slopes of Mount Kenya, and a medley of exotic fruits air-freighted from wherever they were currently in season. Her morning routine was a ritual of indulgence, a soak in her custom-built infinity pool, overlooking a vibrant, mosaic-tiled mural depicting African wildlife, followed by a session with her personal trainer, a former Olympian she'd poached from a 5-star resort in Dubai. All of this was meticulously documented by her personal content creator, a quiet, bespectacled young woman named Zawadi, who followed Lilian like a shadow, capturing every curated moment for her millions of social media followers. Lilian's social media presence was a behemoth. Her Instagram feed, at Lilian Official, was a kaleidoscope of opulence. Private jets adorned with her bespoke logo, champagne flutes clinking against the backdrop of the Eiffel Tower, the turquoise waters of the Maldives caressing her diamond-encrusted ankles, front-row seats at Milan Fashion Week, and exclusive parties where she effortlessly rubbed shoulders with global celebrities. Each post garnered hundreds of thousands of likes and thousands of comments, a mix of adulation, Queen Lilian, living the dream, aspiration, my ultimate goal, and the occasional, quickly deleted jab from those who found her excess vulgar. She reveled in the attention, convinced that her life was a performance, and she, the undisputed star. Her celebrity status wasn't confined to the digital realm. In Kenya, she was a phenomenon. Paparazzi camped outside her villa, eager for a glimpse of her latest designer outfit. Society pages chronicled her every move. Brands clamored to collaborate, offering exorbitant sums to have her simply touch their products. She had a signature scent, a line of luxury handbags she'd designed, her team had done the heavy lifting, and even a philanthropic foundation, Lilian's Legacy, which, in truth, was more of a tax write-off and a PR stunt than a genuine effort to uplift communities. The foundation's gala events were legendary, sprawling affairs costing millions, featuring international artists and attended by Kenya's elite, all eager to be seen in Lilian's orbit. Her arrogance was a tangible thing, a force field around her that repelled genuine connection and fostered a climate of fear among her staff. She treated her employees with a dismissive contempt, viewing them as cogs in the intricate machine of her lavish existence. Zawadi, get that angle right. My good side, you fool. She'd snap, even when Zawadi had perfectly captured her essence. Drivers were mere tools to transport her, house staff, invisible hands that maintained her pristine environment. Her personal assistant, a perpetually stressed young man named Kevin, bore the brunt of her volatile moods, working 18-hour days to manage her impossible demands, all for a salary that, while generous, came at the cost of his self-respect. Friendships were transactional. She had a rotating cast of friends, equally glamorous, equally superficial, who orbited her, drawn by the allure of her wealth and connections. They were there for the parties, the trips, the designer gifts, never for a moment of vulnerability or genuine empathy. Lilian, in turn, offered them access to her world, a world where money smoothed over every inconvenience and bought every pleasure. Love, she believed, was a weakness, an emotion for the less fortunate. Her brief flings with aspiring musicians, models, or minor royalty were fleeting, ending as soon as the novelty wore off or they dared to challenge her authority. Her travels were legendary. One week she'd be skiing in Verbia, the next sunbathing on a yacht off the coast of Capri, then jetting off to Tokyo for a bespoke sushi experience. Each destination was merely a backdrop for her curated Instagram feed, another opportunity to showcase her extraordinary life. She never truly saw these places. She merely consumed them. The culture, the history, the people, they were all secondary to the perfect selfie, the flawless boomerang, the aspirational caption. She flew first class, of course, but often booked entire sections of the plane to ensure privacy and space for her entourage and endless luggage. Her carbon footprint was colossal, but such mundane concerns were beneath Lilian. One particular memory stood out, a perfect illustration of her entitled worldview. She was in Paris, attending a haute couture show, surrounded by the fashion elite. A young, aspiring designer, clearly nervous but brimming with talent, approached her backstage, hoping for a word of encouragement or a moment of her time. Lilian, mid-conversation with a famous editor, barely glanced at him. "Darling," she'd purred, "I don't have time for unknowns. Come back when you've made a name for yourself. Or better yet, don't." The young designer's face crumpled, a fleeting flicker of pain that Lilian completely missed, or simply ignored. Such was the extent of her self-absorption. Her parents, both astute business people who had built an empire in logistics and real estate, had tried, in their early years, to instill in her a sense of humility and social responsibility. But the demanding careers had often left Lilian in the care of nannies and boarding schools, where her privileged status only amplified her sense of exceptionalism. Her father, a stern but fair man, had warned her about the ephemeral nature of wealth, the importance of hard work and integrity. Her mother, more indulgent but equally grounded, had tried to teach her empathy. But Lilian had listened with half an ear, convinced that her path was different, that she was destined for an existence free from such mundane concerns. When they passed away in a tragic plane crash when she was 22, Lilian inherited everything, a vast fortune that further solidified her belief in her own invincibility. She grieved, of course, but even her grief was tinged with a sense of inconvenience, a disruption to her carefully constructed world. Then came the first tremor. It started subtly, a barely perceptible shift in the carefully balanced scales of her empire. A major government tender, which her family's logistics company had always secured, was unexpectedly awarded to a competitor. Lilian, preoccupied with planning a lavish birthday bash in Santorini, dismissed it as a minor setback, a temporary anomaly. Her CEO, a seasoned veteran named Mr. Omendi, tried to warn her. He spoke of market shifts, aggressive new players, the need for diversification, and the importance of ethical business practices. Lilian waved him off. "Omendi, darling, don't be so dramatic. Our name carries weight. This is temporary." But it wasn't temporary. A series of unfortunate investments, made by Lilian on whimsical advice from unreliable friends, and her own inflated sense of business acumen, began to hemorrhage money. Her family's real estate ventures, once pillars of stability, were hit by a sudden, unexpected downturn in the Kenyan property market. A large portion of her liquid assets was tied up in a speculative venture in cryptocurrency, which then plummeted, wiping out a significant chunk of her fortune. She reacted with denial, doubling down on her extravagant lifestyle, believing that spending more would somehow conjure back her wealth. The parties became more elaborate, the trips more frequent, the designer purchases more audacious. Fake it till you make it, she'd tell herself, though the it she was trying to make was a crumbling facade. Her social media, once a source of endless validation, began to attract a different kind of scrutiny. The more she showcased her ostentatious life, the more the comments shifted from adulation to thinly veiled criticism. Is she blind to what's happening in the economy? So much poverty, and she's flying in champagne. Her meticulously curated image was starting to crack under the pressure of public perception. Then came the legal challenges. Accusations of tax evasion, stemming from her father's more aggressive accounting practices that Lilian had carelessly continued, began to surface. Her philanthropic foundation came under fire for alleged mismanagement of funds and a distinct lack of actual charitable work. Lawsuits piled up, each one chipping away at her remaining wealth and reputation. Her legal team, once a formidable army, found themselves stretched thin, battling on multiple fronts. The final blow came in the form of a massive, unprecedented financial crisis that swept through the region, triggered by global economic instability. The market crashed. Her remaining investments evaporated. Her properties, once commanding astronomical prices, became impossible to sell. Banks called in their loans. Creditors circled like vultures. One Tuesday morning, as the sun streamed through the bespoke drapes of her master bedroom, Lilian woke to a chilling silence. The usual hum of activity, the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee, the distant sound of gardeners, all absent. She rang for Kevin, but there was no answer. She called out for Zawadi, for her chef, for her house manager. Nothing. A cold dread seeped into her bones. She stumbled out of bed, her silk pajamas a stark contrast to the growing panic in her chest. The villa, usually bustling, was eerily empty. Her staff, whom she had summarily dismissed without severance pay in a fit of pique the previous week, believing she could replace them instantly, were gone. Their loyalty, never truly earned, had finally dissolved. A letter lay on the polished marble of her dining table, a stark, official document from her lawyers. It was a foreclosure notice. The villa, her sanctuary, her symbol of success, was to be seized within 48 hours. Her bank accounts, once overflowing, were frozen. Her remaining assets, meager as they were being liquidated to cover debts. She was, in the brutal language of finance, bankrupt. Grace to grass. The phrase echoed in her mind, a cruel prophecy come true. Lilian Acketh, the billionaire socialite, was now just Lilian Acketh, a woman with nothing but the designer clothes on her back and a rapidly dwindling supply of self-pity. The next 48 hours were a blur of shock and disbelief. She tried to call her friends, but her calls went unanswered. The few who did pick up offered platitudes and excuses, eager to distance themselves from her downfall. Her celebrity status had evaporated, replaced by a morbid fascination with her spectacular demise. Social media, once her kingdom, became a hostile territory, filled with gleeful schadenfreude and harsh pronouncements about her karma. Stripped of her villa, her staff, and her illusions of grandeur, Lilian found herself in a small, rented apartment in a modest Nairobi suburb, a stark contrast to the opulent bubble she had always inhabited. The silence was deafening. No personal chef, no driver, no Zawadi to capture her every move. She had to learn to cook, to clean, to navigate public transport, skills she'd never once considered necessary. Her designer clothes, once a source of pride, now felt like a cruel joke, out of place in her new reality. The first few weeks were a descent into despair. She lived off instant noodles and what little cash she had managed to salvage. The world, once her oyster, now felt like a cage. She resented everyone and everything, blaming external forces for her predicament, refusing to acknowledge her own role in her downfall. Her arrogance, though bruised, still clung to her like a stubborn stain. One evening, staring blankly at the flickering television screen in her sparse living room, a news report caught her attention. It was a story about a community initiative in Kibera, one of Africa's largest slums, providing food and education to orphaned children. The face of one of the volunteers seemed familiar. It was Zawadi. A strange mix of shame and curiosity propelled Lilian to seek out Zawadi. It took days of hesitant inquiries and navigating unfamiliar Matatu routes, but eventually, she found herself at the dusty, vibrant heart of Kibera, a world away from her former gilded cage. The air was thick with the scent of charcoal smoke and cooking food, the sounds a cacophony of children's laughter, hawkers' cries, and rhythmic music. She found Zawadi in a makeshift classroom, patiently teaching a group of eager children their alphabet. Zawadi, always quiet and unassuming, looked up, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw Lilian. There was no judgment, no pity, just a quiet understanding in her gaze. "Lilian?" she asked, her voice soft. Lilian, dressed in worn jeans and a simple t-shirt, felt a pang of profound humility. "Zawadi," she whispered, her voice uncharacteristically small. I saw you on the news." Zawadi smiled gently. "This is where I've been. After everything." She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. Over the next few weeks, Lilian found herself drawn to the center. At first, it was out of a desperate need for connection, for something to fill the vast emptiness in her life. She started by helping Zawadi organize supplies, then moved on to sorting donations. Slowly, hesitantly, she began to interact with the children. Their innocence, their resilience, their boundless joy despite the difficult circumstances, chipped away at the hardened shell of Lilian's cynicism. She learned to listen, really listen, to the stories of the children, of their struggles and their hopes. To Zawadi, who spoke of the importance of community, of selfless service, of finding purpose beyond material wealth. She saw how Zawadi, with her modest means, was making a tangible difference in these children's lives, a difference far more profound than any of Lilian's performative philanthropy. One afternoon, a small girl named Amina, with wide, curious eyes, approached Lilian. "Auntie Lilian," she asked, holding up a broken toy car, "can you fix this?" Lilian, who had never fixed anything in her life, hesitated. Then, looking at Amina's hopeful face, she took the toy. She spent the next hour meticulously piecing it back together, her hands, once accustomed to designer clutches, now focused on a simple, plastic car. When she presented it back to Romina, the child's delighted squeal and fierce hug pierced through Lilian's carefully constructed armor. It was a small moment, insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it felt more real, more fulfilling, than any $1 million party she had ever thrown. The arrogance began to chip away, replaced by a nascent humility. The relentless self-focus gave way to a dawning awareness of others. She started volunteering more consistently, not just at the center, but in other community initiatives. She learned that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or Instagram followers, but in the richness of human connection, in the quiet satisfaction of making a difference, however small. She enrolled in a local college, taking courses in social work and sustainable development, eager to understand the systemic issues that contributed to the poverty she was now witnessing firsthand. Her sharp intellect, once wasted on frivolous pursuits, found a new direction, a new purpose. She sold her remaining designer clothes and accessories, using the modest funds to support the Kibera Center and to pay for her education. Years passed. Lilian, the arrogant billionaire socialite, faded into memory. In her place emerged a different Lilian, a woman with a quiet strength, a compassionate heart, and a profound understanding of life's true values. She still had moments of struggle, moments where the old ego tried to resurface, but she learned to recognize them, to gently push them aside. She eventually found work with a reputable NGO, focusing on youth empowerment and sustainable livelihoods in marginalized communities. She wasn't leading galas or flying private jets. Instead, she was on the ground, working with communities, listening to their needs, empowering them to build better futures. Her office was often a dusty community hall, her uniform, practical, comfortable clothes. Her social media presence, once a testament to her vanity, became a platform for advocacy. She shared stories of resilience, highlighted the work of local heroes, and championed causes she now genuinely believed in. Her followers were fewer, but they were engaged, supportive, and inspired by her journey of transformation. One day, she received a letter. It was from the young designer she had so cruelly dismissed years ago in Paris. He had made a name for himself, just as she had advised, becoming a respected figure in sustainable fashion. He had heard about her transformation, about her work in Kenya, and wanted to collaborate on a project that would empower local artisans. Reading his letter, Lilian felt a lump in her throat. She remembered the pain in his eyes that day, a pain she had inflicted without a second thought. She wrote back, apologizing sincerely for her past arrogance, expressing her admiration for his work, and eagerly accepting his offer. Lilian's journey from grace to grass had been brutal, a painful stripping away of everything she thought defined her. But in losing everything, she had found something far more valuable, herself. She learned that true power lay not in wealth or status, but in empathy, resilience, and the quiet dignity of service. Her life, once a flamboyant, self-serving spectacle, had finally found its meaningful purpose, a testament to the profound truth that sometimes, the greatest treasures are found not in accumulation, but in surrender, and the richest experiences are those shared in humility. The Kenyan sun still beat down, but now, for Lilian, it felt less like a spotlight on her extravagance, and more like a warm, benevolent embrace.